It was a bright May morning in 2025, and the sun painted the rooftops of Ouagadougou gold. But inside the presidential palace, the atmosphere was anything but warm. President Ibrahim Traoré sat behind his desk, sipping his morning coffee. When the heavy oak doors creaked open, Colonel Sawadigo, his intelligence chief, entered without a smile, just a sealed folder in his hands. "Mr. President," he said gravely, "we intercepted something. You need to see this." Ibrahim took the folder. As he opened it, the casual look on his face disappeared. His eyes scanned page after page: maps, satellite images, email chains. The contents were explosive. American companies were conducting illegal gold mining operations in the northern border region. But that wasn't the worst of it. These companies are funneling money to armed groups. Colonel Sawadigo continued. "We found proof during a counterterrorism sweep last week. They're funding the very people killing our soldiers just to protect their gold routes." Ibrahim leaned back, stunned. He had seen corruption before. But this was systematic theft. Cold, calculated, and foreign-backed. His fingers gripped the folder tighter. For 3 years, he had promised the Burkinabe people transparency, justice, and sovereignty. And now, the moment of truth had arrived. But it came with a cost. Revealing this information could trigger a massive diplomatic crisis with the United States. Billions in aid, crucial trade partnerships, international reputation, all on the line. Yet staying silent would be a betrayal. Of his oath, of his people. He stood slowly, staring out the window as children in school uniforms passed by the gates. "I can't look those kids in the eye," he murmured. "If I let this go." He turned to Colonel Sawadigo. "Call the cabinet. Emergency meeting. Now." As Sawadigo rushed out, Ibrahim reached for the phone to summon his communications director. His next move would not only shake the corridors of power in Burkina Faso, it could send shockwaves across the globe. And deep in the heart of Mar-a-Lago, someone who had no idea what was coming was just beginning her morning coffee. By midday, the presidential conference room was filled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. President Ibrahim Traoré stood at the head of a long mahogany table. Around him sat his most trusted officials, Foreign Minister Dr. Faildar Ouedraogo, Economy Minister Fatimata Sawadogo, and Defense Minister Colonel Koulibaly. The sealed folder now lay open in the center of the table, like a live grenade. "I didn't call this meeting to debate if the documents are real," Ibrahim began, his tone firm. "They are. The question is, what do we do next, Doctor?" Ouedraogo was the first to speak, always composed. His voice was lower than usual. "Mr. President, exposing this would ignite a diplomatic firestorm. We have trade agreements pending with Washington, and our economy is fragile." Fatimata nodded, her brow furrowed. Revealing this now could freeze aid, spook investors, and destabilize the franc. "Are we prepared for that?" Ibrahim didn't blink. "Are we prepared to let them steal from us and kill our people in silence?" Colonel Koulibaly slammed his fist on the table. "Our soldiers have died fighting groups funded by those companies. If we don't act, we stain their sacrifice." The room fell silent. A heavy silence. Ibrahim slowly walked around the table, his hand brushing the back of each chair. "I made a promise when I took office: no more backroom deals. No more silence while foreign powers bleed our land dry. I don't care if it's China, France, or the United States. Wrong is wrong. He stopped at the window, watching a storm gather on the horizon, both literal and political. Doctor. Ouedraogo broke the silence. Then we must be surgical. Speak the truth. But be strategic. I'm not interested in PR. Ibrahim snapped. I'm interested in justice. He turned to his aide. Call Yakuba. Tell him to schedule a press conference for this afternoon. Invite CNN. BBC. France. 24. Everyone. Fatimata exhaled deeply. This will change everything. Ibrahim nodded. Good. It's time something did. As the ministers exchanged anxious glances, far away in Washington, no one had any idea a political earthquake was coming. But in less than 6 hours, the world would be watching, and no one would be able to unsee what was about to be revealed. At exactly 2:00 p.m., the courtyard of the presidential palace in Ouagadougou transformed into the center of the world's attention. Cameras lined every inch of the marble steps. Reporters from CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, and France 24 fidgeted under the West African sun. Microphones buzzed. Sweat rolled down necks. Whispers of uncertainty filled the air. This is CNN's Sarah Johnson. A correspondent whispered to the camera. Reporting live from Burkina Faso, where President Ibrahim Traoré is about to deliver what officials say will be a historic announcement. No one knows exactly what's coming, but the rumors are explosive. Inside the palace, Ibrahim stood before a mirror, adjusting his collar. A single black briefcase sat beside him. No entourage, no theatrics, just truth, ready to be spoken. He stepped into the sunlight. The crowd of journalists went silent. Only the click of camera shutters remained. With calm, deliberate steps, Ibrahim approached the podium, the black briefcase in hand. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, he began, his voice steady but forceful. Today, I speak not only for the people of Burkina Faso, but for every nation that has ever been exploited in silence. He opened the briefcase. Out came photographs, grainy but undeniable. Secret mining operations in protected forests. Heavy machinery under foreign flags. Children standing barefoot beside the toxic runoff. For 5 years, he said, holding up the images, over 200 tons of gold have been illegally extracted from our land. No taxes, no royalties, no justice. Gasps echoed. But that's not the worst of it, he continued. He lifted another set of images, blurry photos of armed men in pickup trucks, their weapons branded with Western serial numbers. These companies funded militant groups to protect their operations. The result, 847 Burkinabe civilian dead, many of them children. The courtyard froze. A chill swept through the air. I have emails, Ibrahim continued, from executives, from government officials, confirming knowledge and approval. He projected one email on a massive screen behind him. Dated, signed, verified. In Washington, the Situation Room went dark with silence. On Twitter, a hashtag exploded. Number Burkina leaks. Back in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim looked directly into the cameras. This is not just theft, he said. This is betrayal. And today, the world sees it. And with that, the press conference was only beginning. Just when the world thought it had heard the worst, President Ibrahim Traoré raised his hand, signaling for silence. But there's more, he said. Much more. He pulled out a final set of documents and handed them to an aide, who placed them beneath the overhead projector. A new set of images appeared this time. Not of mines or militants. These were photos of people in crisp suits, seated in dimly lit rooms. Some wore military fatigues, others designer watch. These were taken in Mali, January of this year. Ibrahim said, his voice now razor-sharp. They show meetings between armed groups and individuals tied to foreign intelligence networks. He zoomed in on one photo, a man in an American uniform passing a crate to a masked rebel. The side of the crate read property of U.S. Aid, medical supplies. But the lid was open. Inside, rifles and stacks of foreign currency. In Washington, jaws dropped. Live streams across major news outlets cut their regular programming. Alerts blared across screens. Melania Trump, sitting quietly in her East Wing office, turned toward the television and froze. She leaned in, because in the corner of one photo, standing behind a tall figure in sunglasses, was a woman with dark blonde hair and a face that looked uncomfortably familiar. Ibrahim continued, "We've traced financial transfers tied to these meetings. Hundreds of millions. These funds stolen from our land have fueled conflict, silenced whistleblowers, and, we believe, even reached foreign political campaigns." Gasps rippled through the courtyard. Then came the email. Projected behind Ibrahim was a screenshot of a message dated the 8th of February. 2025. The content coded language about operations, confidential routes, and two profits exceeding expectations. But what froze the room wasn't the language. It was the signature. Initials M. T. Melania Trump. Back in Washington, the First Lady's teacup clinked hard against her saucer. Her assistant burst through the door. "Ma'am, the phone lines are blowing up." Melania stared at the screen, lips trembling. I didn't write that. I swear I didn't." But the story was already out. Social media exploded. Newsrooms scrambled. Number: Melania leaks shot to trending worldwide. And in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim wasn't done. He looked up, fire in his voice. "If this is the cost of silence, then let the world hear us now." The storm didn't take hours to build. It hit within minutes. By 4:00 p.m. Washington time, the White House gates were surrounded by a mob of reporters, their voices rising over one another, shouting the same question: is the First Lady involved in the Burkina Faso scandal inside? The East Wing descended into chaos. Melania Trump's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her inbox was flooding with messages, some demanding answers, others offering quiet sympathy. But sympathy didn't matter right now. Her reputation was unraveling live on every screen in America. In her private office, she sat stiffly on the couch, her lawyer pacing. "This is absurd," she whispered. "That email, it's not mine. It was never mine." David Morrison, her lead attorney, looked grim. "We're digging into it now. The formatting looks off. The timestamp doesn't match your schedule." "But Melania, this is bad." Perception moves faster than proof. And perception was ruthless. Within an hour, hashtags like number Melania Gate and number Gold Cover Up were trending in over 30 countries. Talk show panels debated her guilt. Late-night comedians sharpened their jokes. Donors pulled out from her charities. Fashion brands suspended collaborations. Polls crashed. Her approval rating plummeted to 23%. Donald Trump stormed into her office, waving a tablet. "This is nonsense," he barked. "You don't even know where Burkina Faso is on a map." "I didn't do anything," she said quietly, still staring at the television. Ibrahim's face was still on screen, now surrounded by headlines, calling this the biggest diplomatic bombshell of the decade. Trump paced. "We need to fight back. Attack his credibility. Discredit the documents." Melania shook her head. "No, if we go after him without proof, it'll only make us look guilty. I want the truth, and I want to clear my name the right way." Across the ocean, in Ouagadougou, President Ibrahim was meeting with his staff, monitoring the reaction. "Mr. President," said Yakuba, his communications director, "the press conference has over 50 million views. It's the most watched political broadcast in African history." Ibrahim nodded slowly, but his mind was restless. Deep down, a doubt was gnawing at him. Had he just shattered the reputation of an innocent woman, and if so, what came next? 3 days after the storm broke, 2 investigations were racing against each other, one in Washington, the other in Ouagadougou. In the U.S., the FBI had quietly formed a special task force to investigate the alleged involvement of the First Lady, led by Special Agent Jennifer Hayes. The team combed through digital trails, metadata, and internal White House server logs. What they found sent chills down their spines. The server used to send the email signed M.T. It was breached. Agent Hayes reported to the FBI director 2 weeks before the press conference, and the breach originated from... The director leaned forward. "Can you confirm fabrication?" "Not yet," Hayes replied, "but it's looking more like a setup." Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim's office was anything but calm. Colonel Sawadigo barged into the president's office, face poly, documents in hand. "Mr. President, we have a problem." Ibrahim looked up, his expression instantly hardening. "What is it?" "Our cyber team traced inconsistencies in the Melania documents. Some of the metadata doesn't match our system. Worse, it appears certain files were inserted externally." Ibrahim stood abruptly. "Inserted? By who?" Sawadigo hesitated. "There's strong indication the interference came from a neighboring country. Possibly the Wagner network." Silence. Ibrahim turned toward the window, jaw clenched. The weight of what he'd done, of what he might have been manipulated into doing, pressed down like a hammer. "We accused a foreign first lady on global television," he said slowly. "And now you're telling me that evidence may have been planted." "Yes." "Sia." He turned back toward Sawadigo. "Get me everything. Full trace logs, chain of custody. I want confirmation before sundown." Back in Washington, Melania sat with her legal team reviewing schedules, security footage, and archived emails. Everything showed she had airtight alibis. "You were at public events during every date mentioned," David Morrison confirmed. "There's no way you were involved. Now we just have to prove it." But in the world of viral outrage, proof often came second to perception. Across continents, 2 governments were scrambling, not just to reveal the truth, but to undo the damage done. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Ibrahim Traoré faced a question more powerful than any political scandal. Had he become the very thing he once vowed to fight? 1 week after the first press conference shook the world, the cameras returned to Ouagadougou. This time, the atmosphere was different. The palace courtyard wasn't electric, it was tense, uncertain, almost cautious. No one knew what President Ibrahim Traoré would say. Whispers filled the air. Is there more? Is he doubling down? Or taking it back? At precisely 3:00 p.m., Ibrahim walked to the podium again. Gone was the fire in his eyes. Today, there was something else. Wait. A man carrying responsibility that had cut deeper than expected. He looked straight into the cameras. Ladies and gentlemen of the press. He began. Voice clear but restrained. I've called you here not to reveal more, but to correct what must be corrected. Reporters froze. It continued. After a thorough investigation by my intelligence team, we've discovered that some of the information I presented last week was not authentic. A hush spread like a wave. Specifically, Ibrahim said slowly, the documents linking the First Lady of the United States, Mrs. Melania Trump, to illegal mining operations in our country were forged. He let the words sink in. The emails were inserted into our archives by outside actors. Our analysis confirms the source cyber agents affiliated with the Wagner Group, whose objective was clear to destabilize relations between Burkina Faso and the United States. In Washington, Melania Trump watched live from her office. Her hands trembled as the words reached her ears. Tears welled. But she held them back. I want to be absolutely clear, Ibrahim said. Voice steady. Mrs. Trump is innocent. She was the victim of a coordinated disinformation attack. For that, I offer my personal and official apology to her, to the American people, and to the world. Gasps. Then silence. In our quest for truth, he continued, we must never forget that responsibility demands humility. I failed to verify fully, and for that, I take responsibility. The courtyard was silent. Camera still rolling. A leader had just admitted fault on the world stage. Back in Washington, aides turned to Melania, but she was already rising to her feet. I need to make a statement, she said. And just like that, the narrative shifted from accusation to redemption, from scandal to something deeper. The very next morning, the world turned its attention to the White House Rose Garden. Against the advice of her entire team, Melania Trump had requested a live press briefing, her first public appearance since the scandal erupted. The podium stood quietly beneath the blooming roses. Reporters packed into every available space, buzzing with speculation. At 10:00 a.m. sharp, Melania stepped out, dressed in navy blue, with no makeup to hide the exhaustion on her face. She approached the microphone and took a breath. Then another. Good morning, she said softly, but with unmistakable control. I want to speak directly, not just as the First Lady of the United States, but as a woman who knows what it feels like to be wrongly accused. A pause. I want to thank President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. It takes courage not just to speak the truth, but to correct a mistake in front of the entire world. That kind of humility is rare. The crowd went quiet. No one had expected grace, but that's exactly what they were witnessing. What happened to me was painful, she continued. But what's happening to the people of Burkina Faso is far worse. If the allegations about illegal mining and foreign-backed violence are true, then those people deserve justice, and they deserve help. Even the most hardened reporters exchanged glances. I was used as a tool in someone else's game. But instead of staying silent, I've chosen a different response. She looked directly into the cameras. I intend to visit Burkina Faso. Gasps rippled across the crowd. I want to see with my own eyes what's happening. I want to meet the people whose lives have been affected. And I want to find ways to help without politics. Without blame. Just humanity. The rose garden stood still. Then, slowly, applause began. Genuine. Emotional. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim watched the live feed from his office. He didn't say a word, but for the first time in days, he smiled. Two unlikely figures, once separated by accusation, were now on the brink of something unexpected, a shared purpose. A week later, the unthinkable became reality. Air Force 2 touched down in Ouagadougou under a soft golden sunset. For the first time in history, a sitting First Lady of the United States stepped onto Burkinabe soil. Melania Trump emerged from the aircraft. Calm, poised, and determined, thousands of Burkinabe citizens lined the roads, waving flags, some cheering, others simply watching in awe. No one knew exactly what this visit would mean, but everyone knew it was unprecedented. At the foot of the tarmac, President Ibrahim Traoré waited with a hand over his heart. When Melania approached, the two shook hands firmly, respectfully. Cameras captured every second. Welcome to Burkina Faso, Mrs. Trump, Ibrahim said. Thank you for having me. Mr. President, she replied. I came to listen. And to learn? Over the next 3 days, Melania witnessed the raw truth hidden behind headlines. She visited hospitals built from recovered funds once stolen by foreign mining operations. She met mothers who'd lost sons in the violence. She toured schools where barefoot children studied English under crumbling roofs, but still smiled with radiant hope. At a rural clinic, she held a malnourished baby in her arms and whispered, "You matter. We see you now." The moment was caught on film. It went viral within minutes. Beside her, every step of the way was Ibrahim, explaining the challenges: lack of infrastructure, ghost mines, forgotten villages. But he didn't ask for sympathy. He asked for understanding and partnership. These children, he said, pointing to a group of girls playing with chalk on a dirt floor, are the future. We don't need saviors. We need allies. On the final day, something extraordinary happened. At a joint ceremony beneath the Burkinabe flag, Melania and Ibrahim signed the founding charter for the Melania Burkina Foundation, a new initiative dedicated to the education and empowerment of African girls. Out of pain, we chose purpose, Melania said at the podium. This is just the beginning. As applause echoed through the courtyard, the camera zoomed in not on diplomats, not on politics, but on two leaders who, against all odds, had turned a global crisis into a shared mission. 6 months later, the world looked different. Burkina Faso had become a beacon of transformation. Once ignored by investors, the country now hosted delegations from Europe, Asia, and Africa, eager to support its vision of transparency and renewal. President Ibrahim Traoré's revelations about illegal mining had triggered global investigations. 3 major corporations faced lawsuits. Sanctions were levied. Frozen accounts were unfrozen. And for the first time in decades, billions of dollars began flowing back, not into foreign pockets, but into Burkina Faso's future. Hospitals were built. Roads were paved. Rural villages received electricity for the first time. New schools opened their doors, painted in bright colors, full of promise. And at the heart of many of those schools was a name etched in stone, the Melania Burkina Foundation. Across the Atlantic, Melania Trump had found a second life, not in fashion or politics, but in purpose. She became a vocal advocate for girls' education across Africa. She spoke before Congress. She hosted global summits. She raised millions through charity galas. Her approval rating soared from 23 to 71%, not because she fought back, but because she chose to rise above. One evening in Ouagadougou, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Ibrahim sat on a bench outside the presidential residence, sipping tea with his wife Ajara. "You know," he said quietly, "when this all started, I thought I had made the biggest mistake of my presidency." Ajara smiled. "Sometimes it takes a storm to clear the sky." He nodded, watching children play in a nearby courtyard. "All this," he whispered, "because one woman chose grace instead of anger." In Washington, Melania stood at a school podium, her voice strong. "We can't erase the past," she said, "but we can write the future. And it starts with dignity, with honesty, and with leaders brave enough to admit when they're wrong." As her words echoed across the room, they carried something rare in today's world: hope. A scandal that began with forged documents, suspicion, and global tension had become something unexpected, a story of redemption, of human connection, of two unlikely allies who proved that in a world full of noise, truth and humility still matter. And sometimes, from the ruins of chaos, something beautiful can grow.